I died holding a hospital bracelet that read Rebecca Matthews, age 19 inches, while my father's laughter echoed from the cafeteria, where he was celebrating my mother's funeral arrangements being, finally, settled with his secretary. But death wasn't my ending. It was my education. I'd love to know which corner of the globe you're watching from, and if this story speaks to you, make sure to subscribe. Tomorrow's video is one you absolutely can't miss. My name is Rebecca Matthews, and I lived through hell twice. The first time, I was too naive to understand what was happening. The second time, I was too informed to let it happen again. In my original life, I watched my father, Dr. James Matthews, choose his 28-year-old office manager over my dying mother for exactly 9 months. 9 months of watching Mom deteriorate from pancreatic cancer, while Dad took extended medical conferences that were actually romantic getaways to Lake Tahoe with Amanda Pierce. Mom would lie in that sterile hospital room, her once vibrant red hair now gone from chemotherapy, asking me why Daddy seemed so distant lately. "Honey," she'd whisper, her voice barely carrying over the constant beeping of machines, "do you think your father is having trouble coping? He used to read to me every night, and now he barely visits." I would hold her frail hand and lie through my teeth. "He's just stressed about work, Mom. You know how the clinic depends on him." The truth was, Dad was texting Amanda during Mom's treatment sessions, planning dinner dates while Mom couldn't keep down a sip of water. Harrison recommended an experimental treatment at Johns Hopkins. It wasn't covered by insurance and would cost $180,000. Our family could afford it easily. Dad's orthopedic practice brought in over $500,000 annually, and we had substantial savings. "Jennifer," Dad said to Mom, not even looking up from his phone where he was obviously texting someone, "we need to be practical about this. The success rates aren't guaranteed, and we have Rebecca's college to think about." Practical. Meanwhile, he'd just leased a Mercedes convertible for Amanda's birthday, claiming it was a company car for client meetings. Mom didn't know about the car, just like she didn't know about the weekend trips, the jewelry, or the apartment Dad was secretly paying for across town. Mom died on a Wednesday morning in April. I was holding her hand when she took her final breath, still asking if James was coming to say goodbye. He wasn't. He was at an emergency surgery that I later discovered was actually a spa day with Amanda in Napa Valley. The funeral was a masterpiece of deception. Dad played the devastated widower perfectly, accepting condolences with tears in his eyes. But I knew those tears were from the argument he'd had with Amanda that morning, when she demanded to know when they could go public with their relationship. 3 months after Mom's funeral, I confronted him. I'd found receipts, seen the text messages, and discovered the apartment lease. The fight was explosive. He told me I was being hysterical, that I was imagining things because of grief. When I threatened to expose him to his medical board and our family friends, he cut off my college fund. "You want to play detective, Rebecca? Fine, but you'll do it without my financial support. Maybe working your way through community college will teach you some respect." I was devastated, lost, angry beyond words. 2 weeks later, driving to my job at a coffee shop to pay for textbooks Dad used to buy without thinking, I ran a red light. The semi-truck that hit my Honda Civic ended everything instantly, except it didn't. I woke up in my childhood bedroom, sunlight streaming through the same pink curtains Mom had hung when I was 12. The digital clock read 7:23 a.m., March 15th, exactly 2 years before Mom's diagnosis. I was 17 again, in my junior year body, but with every memory of the next 5 years intact. At first, I thought I was having some kind of breakdown, but then I smelled coffee brewing downstairs and heard Mom's voice singing off-key to an old Beatles song while she made breakfast. The same song she'd been humming the morning she first felt the stomach pain that would eventually kill her. I ran downstairs so fast I nearly fell. And there she was, Jennifer Matthews, alive and healthy and beautiful. Her red hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, and she was wearing the blue robe Dad had given her for Christmas. She was flipping pancakes and dancing slightly to "Here Comes the Sun," completely unaware that in 2 years cancer would steal everything from her. "Morning, sleepyhead," she called cheerfully. "Your dad already left for his early surgery, but I made extra pancakes because I know you'll want seconds after practice today." I burst into tears right there in the kitchen. Complete, overwhelming sobs that shook my entire body. Mom immediately dropped her spatula and rushed over, pulling me into one of her legendary hugs that smelled like vanilla and safety. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Did you have a nightmare? How do you explain to someone that you're crying because they're alive? Because you can see them healthy and vibrant instead of wasting away in a hospital bed. Because you know exactly how precious this moment is when they have no idea what's coming. Just a really bad dream. I managed through my tears. It felt so real. It must have been terrible. You're shaking. She held me tighter. Well, you're awake now, and it's going to be a beautiful day. I can feel it. If only she knew how beautiful I was going to make sure it stayed. As Mom went back to her pancakes, my mind was racing. I had knowledge now. I knew that at this very moment, Dad was probably already flirting with Amanda at the clinic. I knew that in 6 months their professional relationship would cross the line. I knew that in 18 months, Dad would start draining their joint savings account to fund Amanda's lifestyle. And I knew that in 2 years, when Mom got her diagnosis, Dad would abandon her completely. But I also knew something else. Something I'd only learned at Mom's funeral when a stranger approached me with condolences. My father's older brother, Michael Matthews, had been trying to reconnect with our family for years. Uncle Mike, who Dad claimed was a deadbeat dropout, was actually a successful tech entrepreneur in Seattle worth about $20 million. Dad had been intercepting Mike's letters and blocking his calls because of some ancient grudge over their father's will. In my first life, I learned about Uncle Mike too late. This time, I was going to use every advantage I could get. I wiped my tears and hugged Mom even tighter. I love you so much, Mom. I love you too, baby. Now eat your pancakes before they get cold. Oh, I was going to eat my pancakes, and then I was going to make sure Dad got served a dish he'd never forget. Consequences with a side of complete exposure. But first, I needed to become the perfect daughter. Straight A's, helpful around the house, never questioning Dad's increasingly frequent late nights at the clinic. I needed Dad to trust me completely before I destroyed him. Because this time, I wasn't a naive teenager who believed her father's lies. This time, I was a 19-year-old with the memories of watching my mother die alone while her husband celebrated with his mistress. This time, I knew exactly what kind of man James Matthews really was, and I was going to make sure everyone else found out too. The first step was simple. I was going to let Dad think he was getting away with everything, just like before. I was going to watch him make all the same choices, gather all the same evidence, and build all the same lies. The only difference was this time, I'd be ready for him. The first thing I did was become the perfect daughter, while secretly becoming the perfect spy. I maintained my 4.0 GPA, helped Mom with household chores without being asked, and never missed curfew. Dad was pleased but suspicious. "You're being unusually mature lately," he commented one evening, watching me clear the dinner table. "No teenage rebellion? No demands for a later curfew? Can't a daughter just want to help her family?" I smiled sweetly while internally planning his downfall. What Dad didn't know was that I was using my allowance and babysitting money to purchase surveillance equipment online. Tiny recording devices, hidden cameras, GPS trackers. Technology had improved significantly since my first timeline, and a determined teenager could access almost anything. Within 2 weeks, I had our house completely monitored. Dad's home office, the kitchen where he took his private calls, even his car. I knew his patterns better than he did. My breakthrough came on a Thursday evening in May. Dad was in his office with the door closed, and I was supposedly doing homework while actually listening through the wireless receiver I'd hidden in my backpack. "Amanda, sweetheart, I know this is difficult." Dad's voice came through crystal clear, "but we have to be patient. Jennifer suspects nothing, and Rebecca is too focused on school to notice anything." The voice on the other end was young, breathy, manipulative. "James, I'm tired of sneaking around. When are you going to tell your wife about us?" "Soon, baby. I just need to handle some financial arrangements first. The divorce will be expensive, but once I reconnect with my brother Michael and get access to his connections, we'll have everything we need." Interesting. So Dad was planning to use Uncle Mike's success to fund his affair and divorce. Too bad I was going to beat him at that reunion. "I miss you," Amanda whined. These lunch meetings at the clinic aren't enough. I want to wake up next to you every morning. Trust me, darling. Once I'm free from this marriage, we'll have the life we deserve. The house, the money, the respect. Jennifer will be out of the picture, and it'll just be us. The casual way he discussed discarding Mom like yesterday's newspaper made my blood boil, but I kept recording. Evidence was power, and I needed all the power I could get. A lot of love and effort went into bringing this story to life. If you're enjoying it, we'd be so grateful if you'd subscribe to our channel. Now back to where we left off. Over the next month, I documented everything. Photos of Dad and Amanda at restaurants during his supposed emergency surgeries, copies of credit card statements showing expensive gifts he was buying her, screenshots of their text conversations about their future plans. Meanwhile, I was conducting my own investigation into Uncle Mike. The family's story was that he was a college dropout who'd disappointed their father and chosen money over family values. What Dad never mentioned was that Mike had actually founded a revolutionary medical software company that was now used in hospitals nationwide. I found Mike's contact information through his company website and decided to take the direct approach. I called his office in Seattle. Matthews Medical Solutions, how may I help you? Hi, this is Rebecca Matthews. I'm Dr. James Matthews' daughter from San Diego. I was wondering if I could speak with my uncle about a school project on family business history. There was a long pause. Please hold. 15 minutes later, a warm voice came on the line. Rebecca, is this really my niece? My God, you must be 17 now. The genuine emotion in his voice almost broke my composure. Yes, Uncle Mike. I found your company online. I hope it's okay that I called. Okay, sweetheart, I've been trying to reach you and your mother for years. Your father told me you didn't want any contact with me. Of course he did. That's not true, Uncle Mike. We never got any messages. Another pause, then quietly, would you like to meet? 3 days later, I was sitting in the lobby of the Marriott downtown, waiting for an uncle I'd never met. When the elevator opened, I recognized him immediately. He looked like a successful, honest version of Dad Men's same build, same eyes, but with genuine warmth instead of calculated charm. Rebecca? He approached cautiously, like I might disappear. Uncle Mike. I stood up suddenly nervous. He pulled me into a hug that felt like coming home to a family I'd never known existed. You look just like your grandmother did at your age. We sat in the hotel restaurant, and I told him almost everything. I couldn't explain the Rebirth situation, so I framed it as recently discovering Dad's affair and lies about Uncle Mike's attempts at contact. I have proof, I said, sliding a USB drive across the table, of the affair and of him intercepting your communications. Uncle Mike's face went through several emotions as he reviewed the evidence. Hurt, anger, disappointment, and finally cold determination. This is exactly the same pattern from when we were younger, he said quietly. The lies, the manipulation, the way he turns family against each other. I had hoped marriage and fatherhood would change him. He's gotten worse, I said. Mom doesn't know about any of this. She thinks their marriage is solid. And you want to protect her? I want to save her from what's coming. He's going to hurt her, Uncle Mike. He's going to abandon her when she needs him most. And I can't let that happen. Uncle Mike studied me for a long moment. What do you need from me? Help me expose him before he can do more damage. Help me make sure Mom is protected financially and emotionally. And help me make sure Dad faces consequences for once in his life. Uncle Mike smiled, and I saw where Dad might have gotten his intelligence, except Mike's was tempered with actual integrity. I think that can be arranged. The plan we developed was elegant in its simplicity. Uncle Mike would reach out to Mom directly, bypassing Dad entirely. He'd explain about the intercepted communications and offer to reconnect with the family. This would force Dad to either confess to years of deception or continue lying while Uncle Mike exposed him. Meanwhile, I would continue gathering evidence of the affair, building an airtight case for when the confrontation came. Mom was thrilled when Uncle Mike called her directly. Rebecca, you'll never believe this. Your father's brother called today. Apparently there's been some miscommunication for years, and he wants to meet us. Dad's face when Mom told him about the call was priceless. Pure panic masked as mild surprise. Mike called. That's unexpected. Did he say what he wanted? He wants to meet his niece and reconnect with family. Isn't that wonderful? He's flying down next weekend. Dad spent the next week in a state of controlled panic. He couldn't object to the meeting without raising suspicions, but he also couldn't control the narrative anymore. I watched him make increasingly desperate phone calls to Amanda, trying to figure out how to manage the situation. "This complicates everything," I heard him tell her. "If Mike turns Jennifer against me before I'm ready to file for divorce, I could lose everything. So what do we do?" Amanda's voice was getting shriller with each conversation. "We accelerate the timeline. I'll tell Jennifer I want a separation, claim we've grown apart, that I need space to figure out what I want, and then we wait for her to sign papers, and once the divorce is final, we can be together openly." What Dad didn't know was that Uncle Mike and I had already prepared Mom for this possibility. We'd met with her privately and shown her some of the evidence. Not everything, but enough to open her eyes to Dad's deception. The confrontation was scheduled for Saturday afternoon. Uncle Mike had flown in Friday night, and we'd spent the evening with Mom, sharing stories and building the family connection Dad had tried to prevent. Saturday morning, Dad was nervous and aggressive. He kept checking his phone, probably coordinating with Amanda about their contingency plans. When Uncle Mike arrived at our house, the atmosphere was electric with tension. Dad tried to play the gracious host, but everyone could feel the undercurrents of years of lies and manipulation. "James," Uncle Mike said, settling into our living room, "I think it's time we had an honest conversation about why we lost touch all these years." Dad's smile was tight. "Ancient history, Mike. We were both young and stupid." "Were we? Because I've been sending letters, birthday cards, and Christmas gifts. I hired investigators to make sure you were receiving them. Imagine my surprise when I learned you'd been telling Jennifer and Rebecca that I wanted nothing to do with the family." The silence that followed was deafening. Mom turned to look at Dad with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, calculating disappointment. "James?" Mom's voice was dangerously quiet. "Is that true?" And that's when Dad made his fatal mistake. Instead of confessing and apologizing, he chose to double down on the lies. "Mike's exaggerating. There may have been some miscommunication over the years. But miscommunication." Uncle Mike pulled out a folder thick with documentation. "James, I have copies of every letter, every returned package, every blocked phone call. I have the investigator's reports showing you explicitly told him we'd moved and wanted no contact." Dad's face was turning red. "You hired investigators to spy on my family?" "I hired investigators to find my family after my brother systematically cut me out of their lives. That's when I decided it was time to drop my bomb." "Dad," I said quietly, "should we tell Uncle Mike about Amanda Pierce, or do you want to handle that yourself?" The color drained from Dad's face as my words hung in the air. Uncle Mike raised an eyebrow. Mom's expression hardened, and I could practically hear Dad's world crashing down around him. "Rebecca, what are you talking about?" Dad's voice was strained, trying to maintain control. I pulled out my phone and started playing one of the recorded conversations. Dad's voice filled the room. "Amanda, sweetheart, I know this is difficult, but we have to be patient. Jennifer suspects nothing." Mom's face went through a series of emotions: shock, hurt, anger, and finally, cold fury. Uncle Mike just nodded grimly, as if this confirmed everything he'd suspected about his brother. "How long?" Mom asked, her voice barely above a whisper. 8 months, I replied. "Since last September." Dad tried to salvage the situation. "Jennifer, let me explain. This isn't what it sounds like. Rebecca has been spying on me, violating my privacy." "Your privacy." Mom stood up, and I'd never seen her look so formidable. "James, you've been having an affair for 8 months, and you're concerned about privacy. It's not an affair. Amanda and I are just friends. Rebecca is taking things out of context." I played another recording. This time, it was Dad telling Amanda, "Once I'm free from this marriage, we'll have the life we deserve. Jennifer will be out of the picture, and it'll just be us." Uncle Mike whistled low. "James, you really haven't changed at all, have you?" "Mike, stay out of this. This is between my wife and me." "Actually," Uncle Mike said, standing up, "it stopped being just between you and Jennifer the moment you started planning to use my money and connections to fund your new life with your mistress." Dad's eyes widened. He hadn't realized I'd captured that part of the conversation. "That's right. I continued. You were planning to reconnect with Uncle Mike, just to access his wealth for your divorce settlement. You were going to use him the same way you use everyone else. Mom sank back into her chair, processing the full scope of Dad's betrayal. 20 years of marriage, James. 20 years, and this is how little it meant to you. Jennifer, you don't understand the pressure I've been under. The clinic, our finances, Rebecca's college expenses. Don't. Mom's voice cut through his excuses like ice. Don't you dare blame this on pressure or finances or our daughter. This is about you choosing to betray your family. Dad's phone buzzed with a text. He glanced at it automatically, and I caught a glimpse of Amanda's name on the screen. Is that her? Mom asked. Is she wondering why you're late for your Saturday afternoon rendezvous? Dad's silence was enough. Uncle Mike cleared his throat. Jennifer, Rebecca, I think you should know that I've already spoken with my attorneys about James's financial situation. Rebecca, your college fund that your father claimed was depleted? It's been systematically drained over the past year to pay for apartment rent and luxury items that certainly weren't for family use. What apartment? Mom's voice was deadly quiet. I pulled up the lease documents on my phone, the one on Harborview Drive. Dad's been paying $3,200 a month for Amanda's place since January. Mom stared at the documents, then at Dad. You've been paying for her apartment with our daughter's college money? It's more complicated than that. No, it's not. Mom stood up again. It's actually very simple. You stole from our daughter to fund your affair. You lied to your wife for 8 months. And you were planning to manipulate your own brother to finance your escape from the family you destroyed. Uncle Mike stepped forward. Jennifer, I want you to know that Rebecca's college fund will be fully restored and more. I've already set up accounts that James can't touch. Rebecca will have her choice of any university in the country. You can't just Dad started. I can and I will. Uncle Mike cut him off. You forfeited any say in this family's future when you chose deception over honesty. Dad's phone buzzed again. This time Mom reached over and took it from him before he could react. Let's see what Amanda has to say, shall we? Mom scrolled through the recent messages, her face growing colder with each text. She's asking where you are. Apparently you had plans to go furniture shopping for your new places today. New place? I asked innocently, though I already knew the answer. Dad finally cracked. Fine. Yes, Amanda and I have been seeing each other. Yes, I was planning to ask for a separation. But Jennifer, you have to understand, we've grown apart. We want different things. This doesn't have to be ugly. Grown apart? Mom's laugh was bitter. James, we didn't grow apart. You chose to walk away. There's a difference. Uncle Mike pulled out another folder. Speaking of choices, James, you might want to see this. I had my investigators look into your financial dealings. Did you know that stealing from a minor's trust fund is a federal crime, especially when the funds were established by a third party, in this case, me? Dad's face went white. You can't prove I stole anything. Actually, I can. Bank records, forged signatures, fraudulent transfers. My legal team is very thorough. That's when Amanda herself appeared at our front door. Apparently, Dad's absence had made her suspicious enough to show up unannounced. James, what's going on? You were supposed to meet me 2 hours ago. She stopped short when she saw all of us in the living room, clearly in the middle of a confrontation. Amanda, Mom said pleasantly, how nice of you to join us. I'm Jennifer, James's wife. We were just discussing your relationship with my husband. Amanda looked like a deer caught in headlights. This is awkward. I should go. Oh, please stay, I said sweetly. We were just getting to the interesting part. Uncle Mike stepped forward. You must be the young lady James was planning to support with my niece's college fund. How does it feel to know your boyfriend stole from his own daughter to pay your rent? Amanda's mouth opened and closed like a fish. She looked at Dad desperately. James, what are they talking about? Nothing, sweetheart. They're just trying to make trouble. Let's go. Actually, Mom said, before you go, Amanda, I have a question. Did James tell you he was planning to divorce me? Amanda nodded hesitantly. And did he tell you when this divorce was supposed to happen? He said soon, once some financial things were sorted out. Mom smiled coldly. Financial things. Like accessing his brother's money to pay for your lifestyle while abandoning his family. Did he mention that part? Amanda turned to Dad, realization dawning on her face. You were going to use your brother's money? James, you told me you were successful in your own right. I am successful. Then why have you been struggling to pay my rent lately? Why did you say we needed to wait for your brother's help before we could be together? Uncle Mike chuckled. Because, my dear, James has always been more ambitious than talented. He's been living beyond his means for years, borrowing against future earnings and stealing from family funds to maintain appearances. Amanda stared at Dad with growing disgust. So I've been dating a broke, lying thief who steals from his own daughter. Amanda, let me explain.
No.
Amanda grabbed her purse. I'm done. I'm done with the lies, the sneaking around, and the drama. Find yourself another mistress, James. I'm going back to dating men who can afford me without committing felonies. She left as abruptly as she'd arrived, slamming the door behind her. Dad stood in the sudden silence, looking around at the three of us, his wife, his brother, and his daughter, all united against him for the first time in his life. So what now? He asked quietly. Mom walked to the hall closet and pulled out a suitcase. Now you pack your things and leave. I've already spoken to a divorce attorney, thanks to Mike's recommendation. You'll be hearing from them Monday morning. Jennifer, please, we can work this out. Counseling, therapy, whatever you want. What I want, Mom said, is for you to experience the consequences of your choices for once in your life. What I want is to rebuild a life based on honesty, instead of lies. And what I want is for our daughter to see that women don't have to accept betrayal as the price of marriage. Dad looked at me one last time. Rebecca, you're making a mistake. I'm still your father. I met his gaze steadily. A father protects his family. A father puts his wife and children first. A father tells the truth. You're not my father, James. You're just the man who used to live here. 6 months later, I was sitting in Uncle Mike's Seattle office, officially signing the papers that made him my legal guardian and established my new substantially larger college fund. Mom had moved to Seattle too, and was already dating a kind pediatrician who treated her like the treasure she was. Dad's medical practice had collapsed after news of his financial crimes spread through the community. He'd pled guilty to embezzlement and fraud to avoid jail time, but his medical license was revoked. Last I heard, he was working as a pharmaceutical sales rep in another state, starting over at 45 with nothing. Amanda had married a software executive within 3 months of leaving Dad. Apparently, she'd learned her lesson about dating men who couldn't afford her without stealing. As for me, I was heading to Stanford in the fall with a full scholarship and a trust fund that would ensure I never had to depend on anyone else's honesty to secure my future. The best part? In this timeline, Mom never got sick. The stress and betrayal that had weakened her immune system in my first life never happened. She was healthy, happy, and surrounded by people who genuinely loved her. Sometimes people ask if I feel guilty about destroying Dad's life so completely. The answer is simple. I didn't destroy his life. I just made sure his choices had consequences. He destroyed his own life the moment he chose lies over truth, theft over honesty, and betrayal over love. I'd been given a second chance at life, and I'd used it to save not just my mother, but myself. We'd built something beautiful from the ashes of Dad's deception. A real family based on truth, respect, and genuine care for each other. The best revenge, it turns out, isn't revenge at all. It's living so well without the toxic person that you forget they ever had power over your happiness. And that's exactly what we did. But the story doesn't end there. 3 years into my new timeline, I was flourishing at Stanford, majoring in forensic accounting with a minor in criminal justice. Uncle Mike often joked that I had a natural talent for uncovering financial crimes, and he wasn't wrong. My professors were impressed by my ability to spot patterns of deception and fraud that others missed. Mom had fully embraced her new life in Seattle. She'd opened a small art therapy practice, helping other women who'd experienced betrayal and emotional trauma. Her relationship with Dr. David Chen, the pediatrician she'd met through Uncle Mike's social circle. He'd evolved into something beautiful and genuine. David was everything Dad wasn't: honest, supportive, and completely devoted to Mom's happiness. You know what's funny? Mom told me during one of our weekly video calls, I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, for David to reveal some hidden agenda or secret life. But he's just good. Genuinely good. That's what healthy relationships look like, Mom, I replied. You just forgot because you spent 20 years with someone who made you believe love was supposed to hurt. David had proposed that spring, and watching Mom's joy was worth every moment of pain from my previous life. The engagement ring was modest, but meaningful. A family heirloom from David's grandmother, given with permission from his entire family who'd welcomed Mom with open arms. Uncle Mike had officially adopted me as his daughter, though we maintained the uncle-niece relationship publicly out of respect for Mom. He'd also made me his heir, grooming me to eventually take over Matthew's Medical Solutions. The company had expanded internationally, and I was learning the business from the ground up during my summer internships. You have your father's intelligence, Uncle Mike told me one afternoon as we reviewed quarterly reports, but your mother's heart. That combination is going to make you unstoppable in business. Meanwhile, Dad's downfall had been more spectacular than I'd ever imagined. The medical board's investigation had uncovered years of billing fraud and insurance scams. Apparently, stealing from his daughter's college fund was just the tip of the iceberg. He'd been overcharging patients, billing for procedures that were never performed, and accepting kickbacks from pharmaceutical companies. The local newspaper had run a front-page story, prominent orthopedic surgeon sentenced in multi-million-dollar fraud scheme. The article detailed how Dr. James Matthews had systematically defrauded patients, insurance companies, and even his own family over a period of 7 years. He got 18 months in federal prison, Uncle Mike informed me during one of our quarterly business meetings, and he'll be paying restitution for the rest of his life. I felt nothing when hearing this news. No satisfaction, no pity, no regret. Dad had become a stranger to me, a cautionary tale about what happens when someone chooses greed and deception over family and integrity. Amanda's story had its own twisted epilogue. Her marriage to the software executive had lasted exactly 14 months before he discovered she'd been having an affair with his business partner. The divorce was messy and public, with Amanda losing both her new husband and her social standing in Seattle's tech community. She'd reached out to me through social media a few months ago, asking if we could talk about everything that happened. I'd blocked her immediately. Some bridges, once burned, should stay that way. The most unexpected development came during my junior year at Stanford. I was working on a research project about financial crimes in healthcare when I received a call from the FBI's white-collar crime division. Miss Matthews, we understand you were instrumental in uncovering your father's fraudulent activities, Agent Sarah Rodriguez explained. We're wondering if you'd be interested in consulting on similar cases. It turned out that my combination of personal experience with financial manipulation and academic expertise in forensic accounting made me uniquely qualified to spot patterns that others missed. I started working part-time with the FBI, helping them investigate cases involving family financial abuse and medical fraud. The work was incredibly fulfilling. Each case I helped solve meant another family protected from the kind of devastation Dad had attempted to inflict on us. I was turning my trauma into purpose, my pain into protection for others. One case particularly stood out. Dr. Patricia Williamson, a successful cardiologist in Phoenix, had been systematically stealing from her elderly patients' insurance claims while her husband drained their joint accounts to fund his gambling addiction. The pattern was so similar to Dad's behavior that I solved it in 3 days. How did you spot it so quickly? Agent Rodriguez asked, after we'd secured enough evidence for an arrest warrant. Because I lived with someone exactly like this, I replied. They all use the same playbook: isolate, manipulate, steal, and when caught, blame everyone else for their choices. The Williamson case made national news, and suddenly I was being invited to speak at conferences about financial crime prevention. My story, niece carefully edited to remove the rebirth element, became a powerful example of how families could protect themselves from internal threats. Mom came to my first major speaking engagement at the National Conference on Elder Financial Abuse. Watching her beam with pride as I received a standing ovation was one of the best moments of my new life. I'm so proud of who you've become, she whispered as we left the conference hall. You took the worst thing that happened to our family and turned it into a way to help others. By my senior year, I'd helped the FBI close 17 major financial fraud cases, recovered over $12 million in stolen funds, and co-authored 3 academic papers on patterns of familial financial abuse. Stanford offered me a full graduate fellowship, and Matthews Medical Solutions wanted me to head their new ethics and compliance division. But the most meaningful moment came 6 months before graduation. I was at Uncle Mike's house for Sunday dinner, a tradition we'd maintained for 3 years, when Mom made an announcement. "David and I have been talking," she said, glowing with happiness, "and we've decided we want to start a foundation. Something to help women who are recovering from financial abuse and emotional manipulation." "That's incredible, Mom," I said, genuinely excited. "What would you call it?" "The Jennifer Matthews Foundation for Financial Justice," David said, taking Mom's hand. "We want to use your story, your expertise, and Mike's resources to create something that could help thousands of women." Uncle Mike nodded approvingly. "I've already spoken to my legal team about setting up the initial endowment. We're talking about a $50 million foundation, focused on education, legal assistance, and emergency financial support for women escaping abusive relationships." I sat there looking at this family we'd built from the ashes of Dad's betrayal. Mom healthy and happy, Uncle Mike finally connected to people who loved him genuinely, David treating Mom like the queen she'd always been, and me pursuing work that gave my life meaning and purpose. "You know what the best part is?" I said, raising my glass of sparkling cider. "Dad thought he was so smart, manipulating all of us for his own benefit. But his selfishness actually brought us together and created something he could never have imagined, a real family." "To real family," Uncle Mike echoed, raising his glass. "To second chances," Mom added. "To justice," David contributed. "To turn pain into purpose," I finished. As we toasted, I realized that this was what victory actually looked like. Not Dad's destruction, that was just justice. Victory was the life we'd built after his lies crumbled. Victory was Mom's laughter, Uncle Mike's pride, David's devotion, and my own sense of purpose. I'd been given a second chance at life, and I'd used it not just to save my family, but to help save others. The girl who died clutching her mother's funeral program had become a woman who prevented other daughters from experiencing that same loss. And somewhere in a federal minimum security prison, Dad was probably still wondering how everything went so wrong so quickly. The answer was simple. It went wrong the moment he chose deception over truth, greed over love, and manipulation over integrity. But that was his story. This was ours, and we were just getting started. Looking for more? We've got 2 amazing stories ready for you right on screen. If this one touched you, these are absolutely worth your time. Click to watch them now. And hey, subscribe and hit that bell to never miss our latest uploads.